Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Attorney Farrah from Kazi Law Offices. I am coming to you because it's Wednesday, and I have set a goal for myself that on Wednesdays I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk to you about estate planning. Because so many of my videos are focused on immigration, because that is the bulk of our practice, sometimes I don't get a chance to actually talk about estate planning, and I feel that that is equally as important, if not more so, during this time for many clients. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some ideas, some misconceptions, and also to answer some questions about what estate planning actually is, what's a living trust, what are powers of attorney, what's a living will. These are all the type of questions that I get, and I tell you this because if this pandemic has taught us anything, it is that life is completely unpredictable and unstable, and our best laid plans might be pushed to the wayside by something as globally intrusive as a pandemic. And so when it first hit back in March and we kind of got wind of how serious everything was, I started to get a lot of phone calls and messages from friends and family and from clients asking me about drafting wills and about powers of attorney. And they were coming to me out of a place of fear because obviously they were seeing the news, they were seeing all the cases rising, they were hearing reports about people being in hospitals and things. And so then they got concerned that they didn't have the plans in place to protect their own family members and their beneficiaries. And I always tell people that you should be doing an estate plan regardless, right? So you don't need a global pandemic to get you to this point. But sometimes that's just the reminder that you might need in order for you to get started on this very, very important journey for you and for your family. And the reason why I say that is multifold. There's so many reasons why you need to have a very good estate plan in place. And I keep saying estate plan, but you might not even know what that is. So an estate plan is a plan that you have for the distribution of everything that you own over your lifetime, and for the care and management of your children, if you have any, and other family members, and for yourself if you were to become incapacitated. So, a really good comprehensive estate plan would include contingencies for every possible scenario, meaning that if you were ever, God forbid, to become incapacitated or unconscious, or you had a stroke and you were not able to communicate your feelings, you would have powers of attorney in place in which you have named trusted individuals to make decisions on your behalf, for example, for medical or financial decisions. And then once you were to pass away, you would name other trusted individuals, or the same ones, depending on how you want to structure it, that will then handle the distribution, everything that you've worked so hard for in your entire lifetime, to then be transferred to the people that you designate as your beneficiaries. Now, if you have children, usually it's your children. If you don't have children, it could be siblings or friends or parents or churches or mosques or wherever you would like your money to go. You can designate it accordingly. Most of the time, I get phone calls and people tell me, I just want to make a will, and I don't really know what a trust is. A trust seems like it's for like very wealthy people. What I want to do is I want to make a will. And then when we start talking, we realize that actually what they really need for the maximum protection that they want is that trust. So let me go through the differences of a will and a trust. And I'm throwing out a lot of terminology. So obviously, I'll do my best to break it down for you because there's so much legal terminology that's being used here. A will is just a document in which you will designate somebody to handle the distribution of all of your assets and everything that you own to the people that you want it to go to. Now, the problem with the will is that it isn't private and it doesn't avoid what is called probate. Probate is a type of court that you would have to go to further along the steps of the distribution. It doesn't avoid that. It also has a limit of how much you can pass to your heirs without having to go to probate. So it works for somebody who has very doesn't have a lot of needs or specifics and has a very, very small estate. But for the vast majority of people, it doesn't serve the purpose that they come to. And what are those purposes? For example, if you come from a blended family, for example, and you have children from other marriages, then I would strongly advise that you go into the trust route because it allows for more protection for you and allows for more instructions to be given on how you want to make those distributions. If you're on your second marriage, again, a trust might be more beneficial for you. If you have children, any minor children, again, I recommend a trust because you're able to designate guardians and you can, again, make very specific instructions about their distribution. So those are all some of the ways. But also, if you have more assets, and by more assets I usually mean anything above about 300,000, right? And sometimes when I talk to clients, they're like, "Oh, I have nothing," and they're basing it on what you have in your bank account, which may or may not be true. What you don't realize is the value of your estate actually includes the value of your home. It includes the value of any savings accounts, savings bonds, stocks, your retirement account, so your 401k, your IRAs. If you have a life insurance policy, that's included in the value as well. So all of those things, when you start adding them up, you're like, oh, whoa, I've actually got more money than I thought. And it doesn't mean that it has to be liquid money that you actually have in your hand, right? And that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize. All of those things that you don't actually see tangibly will still be transferred to your beneficiaries, and you want to make sure that they're protected and it's taken care of properly. The biggest thing that I want to talk about today is powers of attorney, because powers of attorney should be really designated for anybody over the age of 18. And I say that, and people always think, oh, that seems really young. If you're young and you're healthy and you're fit, why would you need a power of attorney? Well, because, like I said in the very beginning, if this pandemic has taught us anything, it is that life is unpredictable. And yes, while you might be 18 or you're 19 years old and you're young and you're fit and you're going about your life, you have no guarantees of what is going to happen in the future. And so, why not take those few minutes simply to jot down what your instructions are in case of a worst case scenario? God forbid that you are not able to articulate your exact instructions at that time. I'll tell you how this works. It works in the case, like I said, of incapacity. So if you're no longer able to communicate your wishes and desires, if you are in a coma, if you are unconscious, if you have had a mental deficiency of some sort, then those are the times that you would need a power of attorney to kick in. And a power of attorney should be done for both things, one for property and one for health care. Your healthcare one is you are designating people to make a medical decision on your behalf based on the wishes that you have expressed within that document. Okay? Your property power of attorney will do the exact same thing, but will handle your finances. So somebody who can go into the bank, get stuff out of your safe deposit box, who can make calls on your behalf, pay bills on your behalf, who can get information about some of your finances and things like that on your behalf, who can make sure that you don't lose your home during your incapacity, for example. That's the person that is going to be your power of attorney for property. I probably don't have to go into too many details about why you think that's important, but I'm going to give you one example. And that example is not meant to scare you or to be, it's meant to be an anecdotal, illustrative way of why this could be so critical to you. A lot of times people don't realize. They think that if they're married, they don't need a power of attorney, they don't need a will, they don't need anything because their spouse is immediately going to get everything. That is not true. They also think that if they have a child, as long as that's their child, no matter how old that child becomes, as a parent, they will have the right to any medical information and can do whatever they can on behalf. Again, that's not true. And I found that out personally because I was helping out with a family friend who was dealing with several issues with an older child. So the child had turned 18 at that time. I think she was 19 years old, and she had got into a car accident, and the parents didn't know where she was. So they spent a good amount of time calling different hospitals, And no matter what hospital they would call, they would get the same response that as soon as they found out how old that child was, they said, "We are not authorized to give you information about her." I mean, you can imagine how traumatic that is as a concerned parent who's trying to find their child. And then when they finally did figure out which hospital she was in, they went over, they sat in the waiting room, but they were not allowed to go into the room with her or to make any decisions on her behalf until she was able to gain consciousness and be able to expressly allow her parents to do that on her behalf. You can see how that would be so critical. Like those hours, especially in the case of an accident, are so critical to people. And if you're losing those hours because you just didn't have a power of attorney in place, it is such a vital instrument that you would need that you could have just whipped out and said, "Hey, look, I've got power of attorney. I should be able to do all of these things." So it's just one example, and like I said, there's so many more. But my purpose in coming on here is not to scare you, not to tell you that that you should be there's like a doomsday message or anything like that. It's so that you can take ownership of your own future, and that although we know that the future is uncertain and we have no control over what it entails, we do have control over this thing. You can put your wishes into writing. You can designate your agents. You can designate the people that you want on your behalf. You can be as organized and as streamlined as possible so that the next person in line will know exactly where to find your stuff and know exactly what to do with it. And by doing that, you have created such a great service for your beneficiaries, for your children, and for your family members, so that they just don't have to deal with the trauma. And it really is a trauma of trying to fight things in court and settle things with companies and trying to get assets that are due to them but are locked up in some sort of litigation. So I hope that serves you. Give us a call at 630-504-0648. My name is Farrah Kazi from Kazi Law Offices. I am more than happy to help you. I would love to talk to you about this. I absolutely love protecting families and watching them as they go through this journey in life. So I would happily do it for you as well. Thank you.